Wolfenstein II: The New Colossus is a bold game. Not just in the way it depicts the savage violence, but also in the way it tells its story and treats its players. New Colossus mixes its zero fucks given design philosophy through everything it does, from the ridiculously over-the-top story and tech within it, through its characters, right down to the pacing and design of each level. It's anarchy bottled, shaken up, and sprayed in your face when you dare to open it. And the results are mostly positive.
Monsters did this.
Not monsters. Men.
The plot sees you, as Blaskovitz, or Terror Billy to the Nazis, wake up aboard stolen U-boat Eve's Hammer. Exhausted and wounded after the events of the first game, you can't even walk. But that doesn't stop you from single-handedly repelling a boarding party of Nazis as their commander Frau Engel continues her relentless pursuit of you and the remainder of the American resistance. The rest of the plot is all righteous fury, ridiculousness, and well-written monologues. Spending time with each of the game's characters is a genuine delight, and there are some of the best one-liners in all of games to be heard here.
A crippled wretch of a man, being in a tomb!
Sadly, there's little cohesion or overarching plot that keeps all the pieces in one place, and it can often feel like you're playing a series of mood pieces tied together by the central hero. It's not a huge deal, you're here to murder Nazis and be entertained by the offbeat resistance characters you meet after all, but the shift from one level to the next can feel jarring, and could have been much better finessed. It's an odd flaw in an otherwise exceedingly polished game. So, how's the combat? Slick and bloody is the answer. Wolfenstein II captures the spirit of old school shooters perfectly, while keeping a few tricks up its sleeve to make the action fresh. Dual wielding genuinely makes combat feel different to vanilla single gun use, and there are some neat stealth and exploration options mixed in with all the straight up violence. Weapons are well balanced and satisfying to use, with some genuinely creative firearms. What's not so great is that the signposting is poor, and the levels are far from a delight to explore. Sure, areas like New York and the later levels are absolutely rammed full of collectibles and weapons to snag, but they're all very drab. Endless corridors of grey or maze-like buildings crumbling into dreary swamps. What's worse is that they look so samey, and it's very easy to get completely lost. Later levels do vary the colour palette a little, but they're all on the spectrum between brown and grey. Sadly, the drabness of the environments in which you fight likely means that you'll think twice before diving back in after you've beaten the game. It's not a huge deal, as the story itself is a meaty 15 to 20 hours, depending on how long you take to beat certain scenarios, so there's heaps of value here.
Shut the fucking front door!
Speaking of repeated scenarios, there are certain sections in the New Order that can be teeth-grindingly frustrating, mostly because of the overwhelming odds and the relatively tight spaces. Challenge is good in a game, and the gunplay is solid enough that you won't switch off after the 20th retry, but these sudden spikes do leave a slightly bitter taste. Wolfenstein II rarely gives you an inch of ground cheaply, and you've got to work for each sweet victory here. Character-wise, each member of the Resistance is uniquely smart and flawed at the same time, never predictable and always fun to watch or listen to. You can even pick up neat little side missions from them, which can lead to decent rewards if you see them through, and a special mention goes to the main antagonist Frau Engel, who's a horrible delight. Like all good villains, she's unpredictable, vaguely deranged, and utterly insidious. Not since Vaz from Far Cry 3 have we witnessed anyone as horribly transfixing. Much like Engel, everything in Wolfenstein 2 is gloriously over the top. That's both the game's strength and its weakness. The plot is ludicrous, smart, bombastic, and disgusting in equal measures, taking players to the extremes of what AAA games are capable of. The action too is wonderfully violent, featuring guns that burst flesh and melt bone with unparalleled ferocity. And it's all done at a pace that rarely lets up. In all though, Wolfenstein 2 is a great shooter, with a cast of characters the likes of which you've never seen before in a video game. Yes, the plot is flaky, and there are some moments, you'll know when you get to them, that will make you shake your head in disbelief.
I'm sorry.
And sure, you'll get stuck, and you'll curse the TV, and then you'll retry. The action is just that good, and you'll always be driven to kill that next Nazi to hear what your favourite character is going to say next. Oh, and to take revenge on one of the most hateful antagonists to ever grace a screen. We give it 4.5 stars.